B737 aircraft that was operating flight SD945 from Mumbai to Durgapur encountered some severe turbulence during its descent, which resulted in injuries to a few passengers as well.
Suddenly, the aircraft dropped by about 50 feet. Before we could gather our wits, it swooped up again by 50 feet. Then it dipped again. This roller coaster soaring and dipping went on for some time. I thought the aircraft will snap into two. I thought it was the last day of my life.
This passenger was on board SpiceJet's flight SG945 to Durgapur on that fateful day in May 2022, along with his brother. The brother, Akbar Ansari, was among the 17-odd people who sustained injuries in the flight. 4 months later, Akbar died of severe spine injuries sustained during that episode of turbulence. Hello and welcome to a Times special presentation. In this report by Manju V, we talk about that sudden sinking phenomenon while you are in a flight, that stomach-churning rattle, that sense of foreboding. That's right, turbulence. The SpiceJet flight turned out to be the worst aircraft turbulence encountered in Indian airline history in over 4 decades. Aircraft turbulence cost airlines worldwide millions of dollars in damages, delays, and injuries each year. In India, aircraft turbulence drew attention during pre-monsoon for 2 straight years in a row. And if scientists are to be believed, global warming and climate change will increase aircraft turbulence in the coming decades. Paul D. Williams, a professor of atmospheric science at University of Reading, UK, says, research has shown that severe clear air turbulence, which is strong enough to catapult unbuckled passengers and crew around the aircraft, could become twice or even 3 times as common on some flight routes later this century. Paul shares,
but we've recently extended our analysis globally, and that includes Indian airspace. We found that there will be significant increases in clear air turbulence over India within the next few decades. The projected increases are strongest in the northern half of India and are especially strong in the pre-monsoon season, in other words from March to May, when we estimate that there will be 100 to 200% more clear air turbulence by the period 2050 to 2080.
So what is clear air turbulence and why is it dangerous? As the name suggests, it is turbulence encountered in clear air or cloudless air. Paul explains.
Of all the different forms of turbulence, it's clear air turbulence that is particularly hazardous to aircraft, and that's because it's invisible to both radar and satellites, and also it can't be seen by pilots from the cockpit either. Clear air turbulence is caused by instabilities in the atmosphere, mainly in the jet stream, and especially when the wind shear is strong. Now, climate change is strengthening the wind shear. We know that the jet stream over the North Atlantic Ocean, for example, is already 15% more sheared than when satellites began observing it in the late 1970s. And our studies have used climate models to show that this effect will increase the amount of severe clear air turbulence in the atmosphere by hundreds of % in the next few decades. And that's just clear air turbulence. We need a lot more research before we understand whether and how the other kinds of turbulence, due to storms and cumulonimbus clouds, are also being modified by climate change.
In June 2021, a Vistara flight from Mumbai to Kolkata flew into severe turbulence, injuring 3 passengers on board. Almost a year on, in May 2022, rough air rattled passengers on board the SpiceJet flight to make it seem that the aircraft would crash. Most part of anxiety around turbulence is the fear that the aircraft will give away and crash. Air safety expert and senior pilot captain Amit Singh, who is also the founder of the NGO Safety Matters Foundation, allays that fear, saying,
because of turbulence, there have been no accidents or crashes. The passengers might get alarmed when they see outside the window, the wings flapping, going up and down because of the turbulence. But to take an example, a large jet like the 777 or 747, the wing tips can go up and down. They can bend up to 2 stories, which is almost 20 feet. And they are certified for even more. So the safety buffers are quite a lot. And so far, there has been no accident related to turbulence per se.
Cutting diagonally across the Indian peninsula, the SpiceJet aircraft from Mumbai was barely 30 minutes away from its destination in Durgapur, West Bengal, when it experienced severe turbulence. The summer month of May sends temperatures soaring across the tropical heartland, and on this evening, the passengers on board this flight were about to feel that heat. But sure enough, despite the turbulence in the Durgapur-bound aircraft, the plane did not crash. 20 minutes later, that Boeing 737 aircraft landed safely at its destination. But 17 passengers had sustained injuries, and among them, Akbar Ansari's injuries were severe. From the Durgapur airport, he was moved to hospitals, where he died 4 months later. Data collected by US aviation regulator, the Federal Aviation Administration, shows that between the year 2009 and 2021, 146 passengers and crew members suffered serious injuries from turbulence in the US alone. Unlike light or moderate turbulence, in which passengers might feel a slight strain against their seat belts or find unsecured objects being thrown about in the passenger cabin, severe turbulence causes abrupt changes in an aircraft's altitude and speed. So, what should passengers do when caught in severe aircraft turbulence? Senior pilot Captain Sam Thomas, the president of Airline Pilots Association India, stresses that firmly fastening the seatbelt is crucial for every passenger. He says,
firstly, you see that the pilots will be turning on the seatbelt signs when they anticipate any kind of turbulent weather. Now, before we get to this stage, it's very important to discuss that as passengers, what do we do? I want all of you listening to this podcast to basically observe in your next flight how the passengers behave while they are on an airplane. When you are seated on an airplane, a very simple instruction is given: please fasten your seatbelts. Now, I don't know how complicated this can be. You will see a lot of people who do not do it. What you need to understand is that this innocuous looking seatbelt can save you from grievous injury once you hit turbulence and you're tossed about. What happens is this aircraft, while entering turbulence, can get thrown up and down, sometimes in a mild manner, sometimes in a moderate manner, and sometimes in a very severe manner. Some of the severe turbulences show up on the weather radar in a magenta form for the pilots to figure that out, and they avoid it. When this aircraft gets tossed up and down, if you are not wearing your seat belts, there is a good chance that you could get grievously injured. Now, there are ways in which it happens. One is you make an absolute fool of yourself because you fall on the ground and everybody else is laughing. Second is you hit your head on the roof of the airplane and you could damage your spine or your skull, have some kind of grievous injury. Third is when you fall on an unsuspecting small child who's sitting on the seat. That creates the biggest problem for all of us.
Sam insists that even if you have your seatbelt fastened loosely, there is no way that you would be hitting the ceiling of the airplane unless the aircraft gets inverted. So, keeping the seatbelt on is the only thing that can save you during turbulence. In India, the recent instances of aircraft turbulence have been largely associated with rough pre-monsoon thunderstorm clouds that can be detected by the aircraft radar. Popularly known as Kal Baisakhi or nor'westers, it is a weather phenomenon that brings localized rain and thunderstorm activity with gale-speed winds over the hot Gangetic plains in the afternoons or late evenings. So, if you're flying over North India in the months of April, May and early June, be sure to keep that seatbelt fastened. Pilots avoid cumulonimbus clouds as these are often sites of great thunderstorm activity with high-speed updrafts and downdrafts. But at times, it's not possible to entirely avoid these clouds. That's what happened years ago on a Jet Airways London to Mumbai flight, which rattled even the most seasoned of frequent flyers. Sam was the captain for that flight and recalls a memorable incident with a yesteryear celebrity actor who was on board.
He was a first-class regular passenger. We had the privilege of flying him to and fro from Mumbai, London on several occasions. And he was the late Rishi Kapoor. And he was a fun person to have on board. There was one of these flights which I was operating from London to Mumbai. And there was some action in Crimea and between Crimea and Russia, and also Syria and some of US forces that were at each other's throat. What effectively that does it closes the northern routes and it closes the mid to southern routes from London to Mumbai. And we had just a limited option of one track wherein we could come in, and we decided to come in. Unfortunately, on that track, we had such severe turbulence for such a long time that when it all cooled down after about 4.5 to 5 hours of flying, that's when he told the cabin crew that, Bhai, captain ko bulao. And he knew I was flying the airplane. And so I went out and I met him. So he said, I've been flying this route from the time I was a child. And till date, I have not experienced this kind of turbulence. Ho kya raha hai, Captain? So I explained to him, sir, this is the reason. Putin साहब ने यहाँ पे गोली चला दी है, Assad साहब ने यहाँ पे गोली चला दी है. एक रास्ता बचता है. If we want to go to Mumbai today, we have to take this route. And unfortunately, this is the kind of turbulence that we have to experience. And he said, very good, excellent. I'm getting jolted about, and he was very understanding about the whole fact.
Sam says it's very important for pilots to reassure the passengers during episodes of turbulence, announcing that there is nothing to be worried about and nothing will affect you if you're seated with your seatbelts fastened.
Turbulence is not a killer. If you take the statistics of air travel right from the Wright brothers till now, only a handful have lost their lives due to severe turbulence.
You were listening to a podcast by Manju V on the rise of aircraft turbulence owing to climate change and what to do during such episodes. Do stay tuned to Times Special Presentations for more such podcasts on flight experiences.